As a matter of fact, Shane, most of the focus of this show will be on that Penn State victory.
What a match on Friday night. It definitely lived up to the hype. So much excitement, anticipation. It was as exciting as we thought it was going to be. A lot of toss-up matches. Fantastic night of wrestling.
To me, it was the toss-up matches that made the difference, and that is how we start this week's headlines. Penn State won all the critical, down-to-the-wire matches. Think about it, 133. Austin DeSanto gave Roman Bravo Young all he could handle until RBY came up with a late takedown to win 133. Nick Lee, Jaden Ironman, you want a mirror image of last year's NCAAs? You got it. Going to sudden victory, Lee gets the win. Same story with Carter Starachi and Michael Kemmerer. Penn State 19-13.
It was Northwestern going to Champaign and knocking off the Fighting Illini 26-13. Yaya Thomas, an All-American, got a big pin for the Wildcats. Ryan Deacon victorious as well at 157. Two hard-fought victories from Lucas Davison at heavyweights and Michael DiAugustino at 125. Their first one in Champaign since 1989.
How jacked is Deacon at 157? By the way, Michigan, Minnesota, once again, Nick Suriano gets the Wolverines off to a great start at 125, but give credit to the Gophers. They went nowhere. Jake Berglund picked up an upset win over Stevan Micic. Michigan got things back on track in the middle, but the heavyweight match was not a match at all, as Gable Stevenson once again showing his dominance just all over Mason Paris.
An in-state rivalry between Indiana and Purdue. The Boilermakers win at 17-16. Devin Schroeder at 125, the two-time Big Ten finalist, an 11-0 major decision, his 10th shutout of the season, 9th bonus point victories. Parker Phillies at 141, a critical major decision as well. It's their 12th straight victory against the rival Hoosiers.
Love it when those weekends have so many tight duels, so many close matches, and that's what we had. But when it comes to Penn State in that environment at Carver Hawkeye, Shane, we had something you don't get to see very often. You were there with Jim Gibbons on the call. What was the environment like to be inside that sold-out crowd at Carver when it was 1 versus 2?
There is so much energy. It's really hard to describe. You can see the tension. Tension, by the way, Rick, the color is red. The anticipation, I spoke about it earlier, these matchups. 3 of those matchups, repeats of Big Ten championship finals, the 2 NCAA finals. You knew going in this match, go either way, a position there, a position there. That's how it works in those duels.
And Penn State did go on to win 6 of those 10 matches, but it was still up for grabs when we got to 197. How has Penn State, time and time again, whether it's Iowa, whether it's other Big Ten contenders, whether it's NCAA contenders, started to separate itself just a little bit from the rest of college wrestling?
They just find ways to win. They got those 4 returning national champions. You look at the guys they've added. Max Dean at 197. He's been on the big stage, a national finalist a couple of years ago. 125, Drew Hildebrand, All-American, comes from Central Michigan. Brady Berge shows up. He was on the coaching staff at South Dakota State. They're just so solid, and I think they feed off of one another. The momentum, the skill set, the talent, they're the real deal.
I'm glad you brought up Dean, because we expect this from RBY. We expect it from Nick Lee. We expect it from the guys like Starachi and Aaron Brooks. But I think Dean has been maybe better even than Cale Sanderson expected this year. He closed out that match with that comeback win over Jacob Warner.
That was so big for Max Dean. He is down 3-0 heading into the third period. He's on bottom. Warner had 42 seconds of riding time. So Warner right there looking to keep him down over a minute. He gets an escape, a takedown, and inside those final 20 seconds, working that bow and arrow, gets the 4-point turn to win it. That was an amazing performance, and we saw him do it against Michigan's Pat Bruckey last week. He is a beast on top.
So let's flip the script and look at the Iowa perspective, because as I said, the Hawkeyes had a chance to win this when we got to 197, but they weren't quite able to get over the hump. Listen, Tom and Terry Brands, the last 2 guys who believe in moral victories. It's all about winning, right? So how does Iowa move forward after this and believe in themselves that when it comes time for the Big Tens and the NCAAs, they can match up with Penn State?
I think they have plenty of self-belief. My biggest question with Iowa right now is the status of Drake Ayala at 125 pounds. But the matches we went over, 133, 141 with Leon Ironman, 174 with Michael Kemmerer and Carter Starachi. Those matches could have went either way. So if you're Iowa right now, yeah, you're disappointed you didn't win the duel, but you are still on track to get the main goal, and that's winning an NCAA championship.
And how big were those wins and impressive at 165 by Alex Marinelli. You could argue maybe the best he's wrestled all year. And then Tony Cassiope comes up with a huge win over Greg Kirkliat, who had just the previous weekend come up with a huge win over Mason Paris.
And that really impressed me because Kirkliat got a quick takedown against Cassiope, and then Cassiope really controlled the rest of the match. This weight class at heavyweight, especially in the Big Ten, every single week when you toe the line, you are going up against a complete hammer. It's phenomenal wrestling.
Phenomenal wrestling at the heavyweight spot. Phenomenal wrestling in a lot of weight classes right now. We saw it not just with Penn State, Iowa. We also saw it with Michigan and Minnesota. Now, the Wolverines had some bad luck. No question about it. When Penn State rolled into town, it was bad timing for them. And so I think they started to be lost a little bit in the national conversation. But could I still make the argument, especially after bouncing back with the win over Minnesota, that outside Penn State and Iowa, Michigan is the most dangerous team inside the Big Ten?
I would still agree with that, but this conference, Rick, is so good. I'd still give Michigan the slight edge, but right there on their shoe tops, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Minnesota, those teams with Michigan right now, 141 with Stevan Micic. He's 2-2, and Patrick Brucke, 2-2 in his last 4 matches. 3 of those matches, sudden victory. He's lost 2. But we still have plenty of time to get that figured out before the Big Ten championships. But to answer your question, I would still give Michigan that slight edge to be behind Penn State and Iowa.
Interesting that you brought up that group of teams, and I'm focused on Nebraska a little bit, Shane, because it seems like it's not just Chad Redd coming in March. It seems like this team has been on an uptick now for a little bit. Everybody getting healthy and maybe getting a little bit more dangerous as we get closer to Big Tens.
At 141, you have Chad Redd, 149, Big Ten finalist Ridge Lovitz, and then those upper weights, they are so solid. Mikey Labriola at 174, Taylor Vince at 184. You have Eric Schultz at 197 and Christian Lance at heavyweight. So that's a very dangerous team. Nebraska, they can do some damage.
No one is more dangerous right now than Gable Steveson. I don't mean in college wrestling. I mean in the entire world. He is as bad as any man on the planet. We built it up again. Steveson and Paris. Now, remember last year, Gable Steveson said, stop calling this a rivalry. I'm crushing this guy every time. But this year, it appeared to be a softer, gentler Gable, signing autographs before matches, not quite so intense. He flipped the script when he went back against Paris this weekend. He was nasty, he was salty, he got penalized for unsportsmanlike, and he still wins by 10.
What he is doing this season, Rick, I have run out of ways to describe it. Listen to these numbers. This season, against this heavyweight field, he's averaged over 8 takedowns a match, over 18 points per match. He's been taken down, Rick, in the last 3 seasons, 2 times, only 4 times in his entire career. This is insane, what we're seeing from Gable Steveson.
Now, I remember asking you earlier this year on this very show if we could consider Gable Steveson the greatest heavyweight of all time. You said it's not a consideration, it's done. I think it's fair to say right now, Shane, if he continues this run, this dominance through the end of this year, you could make an argument at the end of this year, you could put him in that conversation as the greatest college wrestler of all time, regardless of weight class.
He's going to be in the conversation. I call it the Mount Rushmore top 4 or 5 guys of all time. He's in mine, top 4 or 5 guys. Of course, you got Cale Sanderson, what he's done, Dan Gable, Spencer Lee. There's been some all-time greats. Here's what's impressed me the most with him. He's one of the best guys ever, in my opinion, on his feet. Yeah. He's a heavyweight. This is unheard of. Spectacular.
Does flips post-match. It is unheard of is the right word. And right now, not just unheard of, but maybe invincible with Gable Steveson. Another guy who has been close to invincible joins the show next. I catch up with Penn State's outstanding 184-pounder Aaron Brooks. And it returns. Everybody's favorite segment is back as wrestlers go back to the mat. Shane with Mat Returns next on Big Ten Wrestling and Beyond.
11-0 aside, 9-3.
2 takedown.
As Aaron Brooks, the reigning national champion. I love that sign of respect. You look your opponent in the eye, shake his hands.
That Aaron Brooks win at 184, part of a huge night for Penn State going into Carver Hawkeye, getting a win over Iowa. Aaron, let's start there. For you individually, for the team, to go to a road arena facing the squad that you know is probably going to be your biggest rival at both the Big Ten and the NCAAs, what did it feel like to leave Carver Hawkeye with that win?
It felt good just because, my only meeting with Penn State was, back in 2019 or early 2020, whenever we lost. So, to go in there and kind of make up for that and get the win this time. You know, just leaving. I know a lot of us were in good spirits, so it was real exciting to go into, like I said, like a hostile arena and just to put on a good show. So,
watching your win over Abe Assad, one thing struck me about you. You seem very calm, very poised, even when you're on the attack, when you're being offensive. Are you as calm and poised inside as you seem to be when we watch from the exterior?
It depends. You know, sometimes I try to I catch myself. I'm like, all right, maybe I'm too relaxed. You know, I got to remember that I'm wrestling, you know, so it's not like I don't want to be too relaxed. So sometimes I remind myself, pick up the pace or come with, stronger intentions. But usually, yeah, I am pretty relaxed. I just try to think about a couple things, keep him on his heels, pull him on his back legs. So.
Well, whatever you're thinking is clearly working. You haven't lost a match in over 2 years now, 34-0 in that span. What do you think it is right now that is helping you separate yourself from the rest of the 184-pound weight class?
I think I just give glory to God. That's my peace when I go to wrestle. And just going out there knowing, wrestling, it's something I've been blessed to do. But, it's just a gift from God and a platform I'm given. And I think, having that peace and just knowing I can go out there and make mistakes, fail forward, is a big advantage, so I credit a lot of that just to my relationship with Christ. So
when I talk about that 184-pound weight class, I do go back to that loss more than 2 years ago to Taylor Vens. Now, since then, you've beaten Vens 3 times. You've beaten John Poznansky twice. You've beaten Abe Assad twice. You beat Camp Cathy as well. When you look at this weight class as a whole, do you feel like you have a rival inside the 184-pound class?
I wouldn't necessarily say I have a rival. I've had some really tough competitors, Parker Hawkeyes, Trent Headley, Taylor Vens, Miles Amin. So I wouldn't say, there's Abe Assad, all these guys, I wouldn't say there's a specific rival, but just grateful for these guys. They're tough competitors. They keep me motivated and keep me working hard. So.
Yeah, those other 2 guys that you mentioned, outstanding in their own rights. You beat Headley at last year's NCAAs. You beat Miles Amin just a few weekends ago. What, if anything, do you feel needs to be improved in your skill set for you to get exactly where you want to be?
I think it's got to keep shooting more, keep shooting, keep finishing, keep my attack rate up and just keep working defense, so always areas of work. I can score in more positions. When there's times where I get stalemates, I can score. So just looking at it from always wanting to improve in every position.
Now, a lot of folks that follow Olympic wrestling know that Gable Steveson was there last year representing the U.S. Miles Amin was there representing San Marino. Now, you were there, but in a different capacity as the training partner for David Taylor. What was that experience like for you?
It was a great experience for me. I'm super blessed to have that. I think a lot of the jumps I made this summer, I credit to just being out there and being around the Olympic team. So I'm very grateful that I was able to go out there and not only, train with David and get him ready, but just experience that environment, the pinnacle of wrestling, the Olympics. So really just, from the mental standpoint and the physical, just having that experience this summer was a huge blessing for me.
Aaron, let's get you out of here on a lighter note. When I look at your team and the personalities, you seem to be calm yet intense when you have to be. And I would think that applies to guys as well, like Nick Lee, that applies to guys like Max Dean. But then you see Roman Bravo Young. And he's dancing around. He's kind of a showman. Is he the exception to the rule? And does he keep the room lightened up?
Roman, at least for me, when I look over and I see him doing his stuff, his footwork, I always laugh, just because I know it's him, So when I see that, I know he's relaxed. He's keeping things, the usual. So I think it is, we have a lot of good personalities and great personalities on the team. But Roman definitely brings a different personality when it comes to that kind of stuff.
So you're telling me that we shouldn't expect to see Aaron Brooks or Max Dean trying to bust out any of those RBY moves anytime soon?
Hey, maybe not.
Hey, you keep us on the edge of our seat. You always do. Aaron, we appreciate the time. Continued success. Best of luck the rest of the year. Hope to catch up with you again soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Tough week for Lane Malcheski. Has to give away his title as weekly mat return winner, but congrats to Lane for making the most of his time with mini Shane Sparks all over East Lansing this past week. Even took him to the Michigan State basketball game, and apparently he was good luck as the Spartans tasted victory. And now who's next for the bobblehead? Well, for that we go to Shane.
Hey, congratulations once again, Lane. Appreciate you taking me around East Lansing. We had some phenomenal mat returns this past week. Let's take a look at our featured mat returns. We're going to start here at the high school level. This is Adam Schweitzer, Notre Dame High School, Easton, Pennsylvania. This area is known for its top physical wrestling. This was a big match against a tough competitor. He does a great job riding like a leech, gets behind, loads his hits up. Big solid mat return. He wins it by 1. You look at the crowd, they understand the magnitude. Tough wrestling, a mat return. Those victories feel great. How about the little guys? Not so much about the technique at this age, but it's instilling a mentality of not giving away free points, finishing periods on top, delivering a key mat return or two when the time is needed, and I love this wrestling. Maybe someday this guy will be wrestling in the Big Ten. Nick Suriano was phenomenal, wrestling Patrick McKee in Minnesota. 3 takedowns in the first period, final 25 seconds, a couple of mat returns to close the period on top. He made that 6-2 score stand in the second period. He also ended the match with a couple of mat returns. That's why he'll be in the hunt for a national title. But the fans have spoken. This week, it's Kaleb Young. It was a 1-0 match to the third period. Kaleb Young, 4-5 big mat returns, got over a minute of riding time. He rode up the Nittany line the entire third period. This was a much-needed win for the Hawkeyes. Kaleb Young wins it 2-0. And gives the Hawkeyes the big one at 157. Kaleb Young picking up some momentum. He's now won several matches in a row, largely in part to his top wrestling and his mat return. So congratulations to Kaleb Young of Iowa. Another bobblehead is heading back to the wrestling room in Iowa City. Congratulations, well done.